the record.
Don, did you ask me or Derek?
Oh, Derek. Okay, looks like Derek.
Yeah, Zoom quit on me unexpectedly there. I apologize. Yeah, so welcome everyone to the August 10th SIG Node meeting. Meetings are recorded, so we'll be kind to everybody, and are uploaded later on YouTube for those who can't join. I think we have a kind of relatively packed agenda today, so I don't know if we need to go over pull request stats this week versus just diving right into 123 planning discussion. I have a bias to do 123 planning discussion. Everyone okay with that? And I can read the table. I guess with that in mind, I guess Murnal and Alana, are you guys?
Yeah. Can you share host with me, Derek? I'll share screen.
Is it Murnal or Alana who's going to share their screen?
I think Murnal's going to share.
Okay, cool.
And now I just give you a co-host. Go.
Okay. All right. All right. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So Ilana and I went through all the outstanding items from 122 and the new items that are already in 123 and put them into this table. So we can go through the table today, try to add priorities, maybe some sizing, and make sure we have owners assigned. So the first one on the list here is ambient capabilities. So this one came in, I think, this one opened in May, and it's already got a fair bit of review on the proposal. So unless there is any objection, I think we should move forward on it. It's a good feature for enabling what the kernel has enabled for a while now.
Do you have an idea of sizing on that one?
I think, is Vinayak on the call? I would say a medium to a high, so maybe we just keep it high.
Medium type priority or like large sizing?
Size-wise, it's a large.
Okay.
Priority maybe a medium, given that, I mean, it's been there for a while. And
so it's been a little while since I had read this cap. I would assume this actually would be primarily driven out of a security SIG, so like intersection with pod security policy replacements and that type of thing needed to happen.
Yeah, it looks like the cap is it's filed under SIG security. I think we're just a stakeholder SIG.
I mean, it does impact the pod spec pretty strongly, I guess. Did we know though if SIG security actually had agreed to what was present here, as the cap isn't even merged or that type of thing?
so I know, like Tim All Clear pinged a bunch of us from the runtime side. And I think Vinayak did mention SIG security, but we can make sure.
Yeah, look, the file is under SIG security, so I think SIG security is the hosting SIG.
Yeah.
I was reviewing this cap. I think it comes to SIG Node because there's a change on CRI. and the Kubernetes API part.
Yeah, there's a bunch of node reviewers listed.
I think it's not just on CI. Also, they have initial have goal to make sure want to have this collaborate across all the container runtime. So this is why they came to the SIG Node. But I agree, and most is like the implementation design and most driving by the SIG auth. But a lot of logistics actually will be done on the SIG Node here. That's why we are the stakeholder here.
All right. So do we have any objections from SIG Node side, Derek, or do you think we want to review this in one of the upcoming meetings?
I mean, I don't have any objection to Kubernetes supporting ambient capabilities. I was just trying to figure out if others could share if this was actually closer to being ready than here. I think we can just talk through how we want to stage this, but does anyone from the SIG itself have an interest in acting as like maybe the primary reviewer for the SIG on this?
I can do that. Like I've tried to enable this in the past, so I have a vested interest in seeing this through.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Bernal.
So we know you're going to cover 3 parts, right? So CI and the containerd and the query. Of course, it's not all you review.
Yeah.
So there are other people there, but it just at least we need someone as the collaborate effort. That's great.
I bolded your name.
Awesome. All right. So the next one is container notifier. So maybe Dawn, maybe you can speak to that one.
So this one it is the due the CAP and the PR. So it's we have the several discussing since last year even, and the initial scope is too big, expanded per Tim Hawkins' request. So it's kind of like the want to solve a lot of other notifier issues for the container, and we've been discussing since we founded the SIG Node. So we over the many discussing, we actually the effective significantly reduce of the scope. Right now it's more just only limited how to solve that storage when container it is how to notify the container is going to be die, and this kind of scope or the limited scope, smaller scope. So currently we agree about the API from high level design. And this one, the latest update actually coming just right after CAP. We accept the CAP, the deadline. And so we suggest they punt to this release. So, but I think a lot of things is already ready, even the implementation is ready. So I will treat this as large and relative the high priority, even it's been so long, but the problem actually for the give the signal and save of the detach of the storage vulnerable. Actually, it is the production problem for such long time. So we should do more work here. So I will treat it as a high priority, relative high priority.
Hey, Don, I guess I remember a few of us had met as like a small group on this, and
yes, a couple times.
I didn't think we had reached an API agreement on this. This still felt in an awkward spot. Maybe Seth, I know you were looking at this some, and do we actually feel good about what was presented here, or?
I didn't, but it was one of those things that unless I actively resisted, it seemed like it passively went forward.
I actually, let me clarify. I think about the will reach of the API is just because we disagree. We strongly disagree of the API initially. It's just because scope is too big. And right now we agree about a much smaller scope and we should also agree about the real use cases. We are doing those kind of things. But for that use cases, I believe we do agree before. But it's just because like the team hacking involved and he want to make that scope, expand the scope and have the new API. We totally disagree on that one because that's we feel like that to take much long effort and we don't see the clear of the use cases. So this is why I say that we are kind of agree about the API because before expanded, we discuss at the SIG Node. We think about the API is okay, but the API later has been expanded and redesigned per expanded scope. We totally disagree. But anyway, I think we should play safe, and because reliability is the top concern, and I still think about this high priority. But if we still don't agree about the API, we just say so and reject.
Can I just ask then that, like, in the interest of respecting folks' time, like, can we get to a spot where Seth is capable to publicly say he's comfortable with this? Like, it sounds like maybe there was some discussion or evolution that either he missed or I missed, but this felt like a thing that maybe we're not all across the same hurdle yet, I guess. And so if there was a scope change, I need to read that for myself, I guess. This still felt very big. So yeah, is it okay, Seth, if I throw you on the spot for that, or?
Yes, it's possible that this SCEP has changed since the last time. It's actually likely that it's changed since the last time I read it. So I will read back over it and try to get a better handle on what the current scope is.
I added you as a reviewer.
Yes, please.
Great. We can move on to the next one then. Identify Windows pods during API server admission.
I can talk to that. So this KEP kind of is a follow-up KEP to the pod security policy replacements. And so basically there's an issue where, because there's no standardized way or definitive way of saying if a pod is targeted for a Windows or Linux node, there can be issues with people or like operators deploying policy to their clusters that can't differentiate between Windows and Linux pods. And there's a couple different recommended ways to identify that. That's with OS node selectors or runtime classes, but there isn't anything standardized that things like the API server validation can key off of to decide if it wants to enforce certain rules. So this KEP is to standardize on that. We're still working with Jordan Liggett to finalize that, leaning towards using runtime classes if you want to identify a Windows pod. But there's a couple of caveats there that we're working through. But the main intersection with SIG Node is, during a lot of these discussions, it came up that it doesn't really make sense to apply, or like, I think there was a suggestion to strip a lot of the fields that don't apply to either Windows or Linux at the kubelet for those OSs before they go over to the CRY API to do those calls. So just since the kubelet knows what OS it's running on, it should be able to kind of safely make sure that only relevant information gets passed to the container runtime. So that's where we're hoping just for either some feedback or consensus from SIG Node.
Okay. So this will be mainly like with the API, and SIG Node's involvement is on the last part of it, right?
Yeah. The main involvement is with SIGAuth and all the stakeholders from the pod security policy replacement and the API changes, since we are planning on doing some validation at pod admission time to just see if the pod should be admitted and if the fields are all set up correctly. Okay. Because historically people have authored policies that require things like the container users be within a certain range for all pods in their, or for all containers in their cluster. And that doesn't apply to Windows. So when they enabled policies like that, it actually prevented Windows containers from getting, or Windows containers or pods from getting scheduled into the system. So we wanted a way to be able to check and say, is this for Windows? If yes, we can ignore a bunch of the Linux specific fields, or is this targeted for Linux or a different operating system? And if so, ignore policy for some of the Windows specific fields.
So just a quick question, Mark. Is there in the linked KEP or elsewhere, is there a consolidated list of what we actually view as a Windows specific field, given that the state of Windows support was kind of evolving?
This came up, I believe that we have updated the, we did a bunch of updates to the pod security policy and pod security standards page in 122 for the docs. And that's more or less up to date. I don't know if there's anything just in this PR. I'll have to check, but well, if necessary, we can add that to the KEP. Also, that's probably a good thing to do anyway. Let me see if I can find the link on the 122 docs.
So, not to discuss this one in too much detail, do we have a size/priority and who needs to review and approve this from Node?
I'm hoping that this is probably pretty small, unless anybody objects to, removing the field, like stripping fields that don't make sense for that particular, for that OS. I don't think we have an approver or reviewer yet.
I asked that question because I don't know why we can't remove those fields at persistence time versus runtime. And so if we can get that detail, I think it would help us do a sizing activity.
Okay, I'll make sure, I'll bring that up, that it might make sense to just remove them. Yeah, admission time instead.
Okay, all right. So maybe we can add a follow-on for you, Mark, on that item, and then we can come back to it.
Sure.
Who would be approving this one for Node? Would that be Derek?
I mean, I know Don, myself, and Lantel have all helped SIG Windows as it's evolved. So, I mean, I'm fine to do that. It's just, it's hard to hack anything when it's the support matrix of what is possible continued to evolve on Windows as Windows evolved. And so just having that clear list is helping educate everyone.
Yeah, and like I believe that some of that, like some of that behavior to drop the fields is already implemented in the kubelet, but it was really just on a case-by-case basis. I'd have to double check which fields we are stripping based on the OS, but it might be better to just take a more holistic approach.
Yeah, like empty dir I didn't think was supported on Windows when I last recalled, and so I always wondered why would that be a kubelet stripping thing versus just a persistence thing.
Yeah, and I think that was because there was no standardized way of identifying it as a Windows pod. If you ask a lot of the API server folks, it's like you can't really rely on OS, the node selectors on OS. So they didn't want to take a stance at the persistence time, but they figured the kubelet should know because the kubelet's running on. You can just check the OS the kubelet was compiled for and running on. That was the big
but that's where I got
for them.
confused. Maybe the last thing on this topic before we move on is I thought there were some potential desires to support both Windows and Linux pods at points on the same host. So it just gets tricky at all levels. So either way, if
yeah,
there's a list of well-known things we should drop, I guess we should probably just collect that first and then know a sizing on.
Yeah, and that's why we're leaning towards runtime classes. Runtime classes would, like, if we do end up supporting, Linux containers on Windows, that would all be configured through runtime classes. And so that would be a good way to identify in some of those specifics. But yeah, I'll follow up next week after we get some more answers.
Great. So moving on to the next one, swap. Ilana, you want to talk to it?
Yeah, I think like the good news is I think we hammered out most of what needed to be done for beta when we put together the alpha level cap. So I don't think there'll be much changes that need to happen now based on the alpha implementation. Hopefully we can just say like, let's target beta and go ahead and do the thing. I think I'll have to fill out the PRR stuff, but other than that, and yeah, I think we have a reviewer approver for that one already. I don't think, so it was definitely, I don't know if it would count as large at this point, maybe like medium. I guess it depends on how much work needs to be done on the end-to-end tests.
What is pod level C group enforcement?
That should not be a ton of code. I mean, we'll see. Because I don't think that we're currently doing anything in the kubelet right now where we're touching C groups other than maybe in the container manager stuff for like device manager, CPU, that sort of thing, but not through the normal PLEG. So I don't know. I need to look into it.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the scope of what going to beta. Like, is it going to beta as is, or are we adding features?
Oh, those things we need to do, and then we can bump it to beta.
So the pod level C group, when we did the review on the last release, I didn't realize that we didn't have that bound as alpha criteria, and then we ended up deferring to beta. That's a very small change. The larger change for beta, I felt, was understanding if system reserved and eviction would actually work properly or could ever work properly on a host with swap on. So I still feel we need to answer that question. And I thought that we had that captured in the beta criteria. So I think large is a fair assessment on this. I think the pod level C group setting is relatively small.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. That's definitely in the cap. I didn't include it in the short notes here. So yeah, I think it's fair to leave that as large.
Probably we need some real world testing data as well, enabling it and seeing what happens. Right. We can move on to the next one. Peter or David, if you can talk to C advisor less CRI full starts.
Yeah, I think for this one, or go ahead.
No, you.
Oh, sorry. Well, I mean, yeah, I'll just give a quick update. I mean, I think for this one, we did a lot of work in the last release. I think there's some of the stuff has already merged after the branches opened. So I think it's just basically continuing that work and then doing some of the actual implementation within the container runtime. So within containerd and within cryo. And also, I think testing will be a big focus and making sure that all the metrics are there. And I think that's going to be our main focus this cycle. So
the kubelet changes PR still needs to be merged, right? We got the CRI in. Okay.
Yeah, Peter, go ahead if I missed anything, or let me know.
Nope, that's correct. Yeah, so we haven't updated the cap pointing it to the new version, but that's basically the only thing that is probably going to be done because we missed last release. So it's pretty much just carrying it from last release.
Okay. And we have folks identified to work on the cryo and containerd changes, right? David, I know you mentioned there was someone who was going to.
Yes, we have some folks interested on both sides. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. So the next one is in place pod vertical scaling, Vinay. So I think we need reviews early on this one, based on what happened in the last cycle.
Do you want to switch to sidecar containers? Matthias commented that he want to leave soon. He need to leave soon.
Oh, sure. I missed
It's
that.
a third from end.
Okay, we'll come back to this one then.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Where is it in the list? Does it need to be added?
It's called a Keystone.
Okay, we can add it if needed. Go ahead.
It should be in the last page or something.
Yes, in the last page. So actually, it's a very small subset on the KEP that was started by Rodrigo almost a year ago, and we only focus on one particular problem. Is for the job completion issue. When you have a sidecar in a job, the job never finishes. And the goal is to just go alpha this time and use annotations, so we don't need to change the API at first. So we'd like to go this way just to gather feedback, have a small change that will prepare for the rest later.
What is a Keystone container?
Aditi came with this name. So it's like the main a set of main containers that are not the sidecar. It's the opposite of sidecar. I don't know why this name was chosen actually.
So we haven't discussed this in SIG since Rodrigo was working on it, right? So maybe it may help if you guys do a short presentation on what it is and what is being proposed. Or
Yes.
do you have a link to the KEP, or it's just at this point?
It's the full draft for the KEP. We just we did it there because it was easier to comment.
I think that like it's not yet a KEP, right? It's just a draft in HackMD.
Yes.
This might be
Yes.
a bit ambitious to try to put in, given that we haven't actually, like, we don't have a KEP draft up and we haven't had a review or presentation in SIG Node. So
Maybe what we can do is we go through the list, and this isn't like an ACK or NAC on anything in particular, but if we could annotate which things actually impact pod lifecycle, and if we could set a budget for the number of pod lifecycle impacting changes we want to make.
Yes.
Just seeing container notifier and Keystone containers, and maybe as we get through the list, we'll find out there's like 6 fundamental changes to pods that might be something we want to evaluate in, but
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can call them here.
Okay, and then if we have enough budget, we will come another evening soon to present.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to hear maybe any changes in perspective that had happened. So a big +1 to that concept. I still will openly say I'm biased towards like evaluating if we're meeting the needs of correlated communities. So like big issue I recall with the primary approach was we had no way to still inform the Istio community, for example, on how you could actually do end-to-end TLS without limiting the pod spec, like because it didn't include in containers and stuff. So maybe Keystone Containers isn't trying to solve that problem, but
it will actually.
Okay.
It's just the first step, and we want it to be less ambitious than Rodrigo's attempt to make it easier to review.
Yeah, that all sounds positive. So yeah, please set time to present when you're ready.
Okay.
Let's just add the list, but the meeting of the reviewer and approver. So until the presentation, then we can discuss more. Yeah. So make sure we can track this one.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So on the pod vertical scaling, we have reviewers and approvers assigned, right? Is there anything more to discuss there besides like?
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay. So the next one is the priority class value-based graceful shutdown. And David, I was thinking maybe we can move it to beta in the next release.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Same thing for SecCom. By default, we did the alpha in the next previous release. We can target a beta in the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next one, Mike Brown, ensure secret pulled images. This one missed the kept freeze last time, so we put it back here to see if we can attempt to get it in now. Is Mike on the call? We can tag him offline.
Yeah, but maybe this one also need the review and approval, right? So previous two we don't, because we already know and it's moved to the beta, so we already go through that. But
Yeah, so probably at min we should just annotate this as it's actually pod lifecycle impacting, because we need to ensure that the image FS is always consulted, even if it doesn't touch the API.
Anyone wants to volunteer as a reviewer?
You can put me and I think Ruben is on the call. Ruben, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I can take a look.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thanks. gRPC probes, Sergey, I know you were reviewing this one. So
Yeah, I mean, PR is out and it's a good scoped PR for alpha. Unfortunately, like we have so many iterations that we didn't fit into previous release. Hopefully next release will be, like this release will be okay. So I keep reviewing the PR.
Okay. Right. So CRI graduation, we are waiting for an update of containerd into the CI with the V1 protos. So if anyone can talk to that, I'll check with Mike Brown. So I know like they did the work to merge those changes, or they were in flight. So hopefully they are merged, and it's just a matter of updating containerd in CI. So this is going to be like ongoing. We also have other CRI changes in flight.
Yeah.
So next one is container checkpointing. So we discussed this one last week, and I know like Adrian has an updated KEP, and that KEP needs review, basically. Adrian, are you on the call?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have another microphone today. Okay, yeah, I'm on the call. Yes, the CAP needs review. I accidentally put it on the SIG Node agenda. I was not aware that it's also on this document. Yes, the CAP needs review, and do I need to open pull requests already for the actual changes? Because I still have opened the pull request for the proof of concept, and we discussed that we want to do it differently in smaller pull requests. So do I wait until the CAP is merged, or do I already open corresponding pull requests for code changes?
I think you can parallelize that, since
yeah.
at least in this meeting, I think last time we agree about the scope, right? Only do the checkpoint. We agree about the value. And so you can update the CAP at the same time to start to do the prototyping.
Okay, thanks. So I will do this, yes.
I love to review, but I don't think about that I can personally handle that. I have so many other things. So I definitely will take a last look. So who want to volunteer to review this one?
And also review this CAP, and or anyone to help install.
So I know that spent time with Adrian, and so did Mernal. But so it'd be good if we at least have
Yeah,
Dawn or Tal, someone else to give a look that's not necessarily biased by our own previous discussions.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone else wants to be like the owner for the review, like happy.
I think the Tal just mentioned that. I think the menu, please also. I think this is. I think it's kind of even we cut the checkpoint only the scope to checkpoint, but I think this is a really good feature. But and so maybe menu Tal both you can have the 2S and to look at this one.
Okay.
Sounds great.
That's good. Okay. And in terms of priority, do you want to call it a medium? Any thoughts there? And
I mean, it's not user facing in any fashion, but I think medium's fine.
Okay. And sizing, maybe large. What do you think, Adrian? I would just.
I think medium because because we discussed that it's basically going to be changes to the CRI API, and I expect a few small changes to the kubelet to trigger the checkpointing, but as it's only minimal, and most of the work is done by the container engine, so I expect medium, but maybe it's large, so but I guess we can adapt.
Okay, no worries, thanks.
Yeah.
I put it as medium.
Okay, thank you.
Always change it later.
Yeah.
So the next one is C groups V2, and I think over there, I know at least one item that needs to be fixed. So Clayton, while testing, pointed out that there were issues with eviction tests. One knob, the memory force empty, that is in C groups V1, isn't in C groups V2. So we need to figure out what we need to do for that one. And the second thing is getting the CI jobs running and green periodically.
I'm definitely seeing flakes on C groups V2. Mernal, I feel like the eviction tests are just like irredeemably broken for everyone right now.
Okay.
Danielle, were you looking into those?
Yeah, so all of the memory pressure tests are now fixed and working. The ones that remain broken are storage, which I'm currently testing a fix for. And then after that, PID reuse. But PID reuse seems to be flaky, not entirely broken, which is a step up over the rest of them. So.
Okay. All right. So I think, yeah, getting those stable will help. But I think in this case, we is just missing a knob entirely. So we'll have to think of a way, or maybe like how Giuseppe work with the upstream kernel and see if we can get that enabled for V2.
So we don't have confidence to get better, right? Because that's the knob, kernel knob.
That's a kernel knob that we use today. I mean, it may be possible that we may be fine with it, but we don't know. We really have to try it out to figure out.
Where are we using memory.force empty right now?
In the eviction tests.
It's not used in the actual kubelet, right?
It's not in the code path that I saw in the kubelet. It's just the eviction tests. I happen to be running this on Fedora 34 and just noticed it, so I brought it up with Mernal. But yeah, it's just not. It doesn't do anything, and you can't even set it. You get a permission denied because it's on a sysfs that doesn't exist.
Is there an open issue for it for like removing the dependency on that already? And that's something we should be able to remove. And
yeah, we can open an issue. Yeah.
Mostly if there's an issue, assign it to me and I'll take a look, given that these are all in my head right now.
Right.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Daniel. I want to understand why we're using that lob. For the sounds like that lob just for test. Maybe we just after that one, trigger that one, then we measure it is successfully or whatever. I don't know. Is the reclaim and is that force of the reclaim? I don't understand this.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, it's trying to free up all the memory assigned to a C group. So if it just does, then it's not as.
I think it's trying to get an accurate. It's trying to basically get to an accurate value that can use for some of the rest of the tests. Also, and so this is another problem I noticed with a lot of eviction. They're actually very, very hard to run outside of an environment. I don't really think it's a requirement for this. And it was definitely a lot of them, they set up very precise conditions that are not necessarily like, I want to use exactly this value versus just looking at what the current status is. Some of that's just trying to get the test reliable, so it's understood. But this was a place of, it was trying to get it down to get a precise value to then use a precise value over time, which is somewhat fragile, not ridiculously fragile in a controlled environment, but.
Yeah, part of what I'm doing right now is getting them to stable, and then I'm gonna probably end up doing a lot of refactoring of them because it took me like a day to get them running properly.
Yeah. I noticed that as well. So that's great. And I think that if you're planning on doing that, that would probably would address the need for it. It did not look as if the test actually fundamentally depended on it. So we'll get that bug open.
I saw David Dashpool was here, and he may have some earlier. Maybe he left. So
I'm still here.
Oh,
I'm just hiding.
Can you share, because I remember those like the eviction test introduced by you, and I remember there's the problem we try to address because eviction test, especially for memory and the disk, used to be really flaky, and I believe this is why we did something in the test. So maybe you still remember why we are using that.
I mean, for force empty, it's because there were previous tests that would cause high memory usage, and then the eviction tests wouldn't work well. So it was something that was practical at the time. It may or may not actually be required, but it was something that we did to deflake the test environment.
Yeah, that's what I remember. So now it's flaky. If we remove this one, I'm not sure we'll deflake, maybe even introduce more flakiness.
That's part of why I want to bring them to stable first, because then we have a bit more leeway to like figure out if something is gonna introduce new breakages. We should be able to get away with not using it, given that I'm not sure it always works today. But we'll see.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and just one thing I want to add regarding the CI jobs. So like we probably want to get the CI job parity for SIG v2 as part of beta, I'm guessing. So for like the serial tests and conformance, we already have we've been working on like, for example, container conformance test and node test, et cetera. But I think we also want like serial test parity, right, for SIG v2. So something else we probably need to do.
Just a quick time check. I think we have like 9 more things on this list to go over. We have about 15 minutes left in the meeting, and we have a bunch of other stuff on the agenda. So I'm not sure how we want to handle that, but.
Do you want to just keep going and then spill over into the next meeting, or do you want to pause, take some other items and cover the rest in the next one?
I mean, I think that it would be good to not let the whole agenda spill over to next meeting. So maybe we can spill over some of the KEP review to next meeting and go over the rest of the agenda now, if people are cool with that. There's some things on here that are just deprecations. So I think that they're not necessarily a big deal to discuss yet.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I agree with Alala. Can we?
All right. I'll stop sharing. Thanks, folks.
Thanks. So, Anala and Manu, maybe you want to talk because that's,
so when Mernal and I were going through and starting the planning stuff yesterday, putting stuff into the doc, one thing that sort of came up last release, so we have a more extended release cycle. The release is longer, and an issue that we had in a large number of cases was that things were not ready to review until like a week before code freeze, despite having a lot more dev time. And that caused a bunch of problems with trying to deal with CI and whatnot. And I basically spent the last month scrambling to get like tests working properly and unbroken because they all broke right during code freeze. And so my suggestion would be maybe to try to make that a little bit easier on people and to spread out the load a little bit. anything that is either a new alpha feature or a deprecation, like it needs to be ready for review 5 weeks before code freeze. And anything that's not, like, we say either we're not going to take it or like it's like low priority. That still gives a lot of time for development. Like we're looking at mid-October, but I think that it will make things a little bit smoother since things are very deadline driven right now. So like just imposing upon us as SIG Node a sort of like interim deadline that if there are any deprecations that are happening or new features, like it can't be ready for review 1 week before code freeze. Like it's got to be ready much earlier.
Yeah, that's a proposal. What do folks think?
Yeah, I think there's two things. So like work that then kind of spans SIGs. I could see that being difficult to tease our ways through. I think it's good to suggest a time. I think the other thing is I'm seeing we could approach this as just too much stuff, right? And so if I think back to the list we just reviewed, it was a really big list. So we could either look at this at saying have big appetites, but then time bound ourselves to then try to scramble to see what can get in that time. And I think we'd still end up having then a crunch on that 15th and getting pushed by others to say, well, come on, let my stuff through, or that type of thing. Or we can just try to maybe establish a change budget and give people more leeway. So I don't know if I have an answer, but I could see a tension there.
May I suggest? May I? May I? Can I finish? So sorry. And may I suggest something? I like this idea, but I think about alpha maybe a little bit difficult to do. The alpha feature normally it is always have the API approval, always and also have some other cross other SIG and effort. So it's much harder for them to collaborate that one. And also normally alpha feature always have the like a flag, and by default is disabled. I will suggest like a beta feature and also deprecation, like the promote from alpha to beta maybe can, because I think a lot of is driving beta feature promotion to beta or GA is driving by our org, our sake, and not org. And also the deprecation driving by us, so that's easy to collaborate. But the alpha maybe we could, because anyway, if it's not good, we could reject it, and always should just anyways disabled. So let's do that. I think that would be easier.
That sounds reasonable to me. The only reason I was picking on alpha features a little bit is in part because of the difficulty with API review and whatnot. Like if a PR is in a work in progress state until a week before code freeze, the likelihood that it gets approved is like it's much lower. So I think that if we try to push things a little bit earlier, so maybe we'll say like recommended for alpha but not required, but for the beta and deprecations, that I think that would make it easy.
Yeah, that be, I think that's easier. And also if we want to suggest this one, kind of like the we try to call out, not mandatory, but we should announce whatever opportunity, like our SIG Node community, and also send an email to the SIG Node. And so because not everyone actually, I think attended today's meeting, they may don't know. And
the way to frame is, I think it's a fair ask for the assigned approver on an item to ask as a part of the negotiation between accepting the work and building the work that a schedule that's mutually acceptable to both parties is worked out. And I think it's nice to have that conversation. I know I would find that useful if we could smooth things out, but maybe each approver can figure out if that time works for them or not, type of deal. I don't know.
Another alternative would be, yeah, another alternative would be require as a date for everything to have at least like work in progress PR out. So, I mean, some proof of concept being already implemented. This way, it doesn't pick on specific like type of work. It's just saying that we need more time to review.
That's good. Yeah. Okay. Elena, can you
Yeah,
send
I'll take an action to send an email summarizing this, and then people can take a look and let me know if it looks good.
Cool. Thanks. So next one, I think I put there because Derek and I discussed, and I feel so guilty because Derek and I promised to give an update a month ago, but because the vacation, all those kind of things happened, we didn't make much progress. So last Friday, Derek and I meet, and we have the really long discussing. I think both and I agree, and we have like we admit in the past the kind of the documentation about membership and approval, and written like the even before 1.0 out, and it's kind of like the we. At least the SIG node, I believe a lot of the SIGs, I asked the SIG API machinery and the SIG network. So most of the SIG is not follow that one. They have like the relatively higher bar. But on the other hand, both Derek and I discussed, we think about it. We both acknowledge that our previous bar is too high, and the community is different. Kubernetes is different. SIG node is different. And so right now we are more focused on the reliability and the predict release and all those kind of the other work. So we should address the change, adaptive change our SIG reviewer and also approver requirement and request those kind of things. So and we also we have some like the draft written out. And we'll send Derek, maybe you want to add more. And we are Derek and I still review, but almost done. And so we are going to send the existing of the approver and also plus of the sub project leads, for example, like Sergey and Alana for review. Then we and also UG even still and still hold some project leads. So after they are share their old experience, so we have the better balance, and then we will share with to our SIG node community for the opinion. So that's kind of status. Derek, do you want to add more about this?
Yeah,
one?
I mean, I think we said we were going to try to get something sent out based on the draft, but I don't think what we ended up settling on was. And I don't even want to say settled. What we can put out for broader review is too confrontational. So like at a high level, like I just try to take some notes from our discussion. Like Kubernetes at the version we are now, we've assembled a lot of feature and function that intersects within the kubelet that it's hard for any one individual to keep it all in their head. And so we need to have like a community of approvers that have a strong shared trust requirement. And so I think we're trying to capture that in doc, but like for approver roles in particular, like some of the qualifications, just so we're transparent, like you need to be a real human being, as in like, if you want to come forward to be an approver in the SIG, we need to like know you on a human level, see your face, hear your voice, and not just at a GitHub level, if that makes sense. And I think that's important for us to have both trust and a sense of security and real community. And then the other major theme that I think we were looking at was maybe the pathway that other approvers had gone through. And we felt like in some cases, maybe some folks were held back too long, but there was always an intermediate step. So I think what you'll see written there is like new top level approvers in the kubelet. It's expected that you'll go through an intermediate approver right within a subfolder or in an adjacent vendored project. So I think that that's fair, and we should capture that. And then for top level approval, it would be expected you'd have rights in more than one subfolder. And so I just want to recognize that like in the community, like we've gone and made progress in that in the last meeting where we've elevated some rights for some members therein. And I think that that's a big next step to moving further on that. the big debate I have in my head, and I think I want to hear the community's view on this, is just like, what's the pathways for people to grow that trust? And I kind of captured it in like 2 notes. So like, and they come with different time frames. And so like one would be like demonstrating deep inside out expertise of the kubelet via like submitting a contribution, refactoring fixes, basically like chopping woodwork. And that would include like a lot of low-level analysis for like bottlenecks and pod startup time or latency or kubelet object allocations, basically like us looking at people spelunking pprof dumps as an example of like a very clear way you can demonstrate inside out expertise. And then we have the more traditional path that we've looked at in the project, which was like, did you drive more than one KEP across stages? I think it's fair to say that if folks who come forward try to optimize for either path, given the extended release cadence of Kubernetes right now, that KEP process might be a little longer. And so I think we need to find the right balance on that. And I think as we get the document out to the existing set of approvers and sub-project owners, we can find the right balance on that. But that generally captured, I think, the discussions that we've had thus far, and hopefully we can reach consensus on that more broadly. But I think that I kind of summarized my notes here. So yeah, so look forward to getting that out to the mailing list and hearing feedback. And I think both Don and I are, and all the other existing maintainers are committed to trying to find the right balance of growth, trust, and overall like project security posture.
Yeah. And also apologize because we didn't discuss this topic, and I feel guilty like on this updates for such a long time. But we felt I'm glad last week at least we make a small progress, and also we are going to share this for everyone's review and feedbacks.
Oh, thanks, Don, for putting this on the agenda, and hopefully we can get this settled in the next week or so.
Cool. So Manu, I think you are have another. Oh, we ran out of time, but yeah, maybe we can cover this one. If is this will be, is this going to be now? Because I think this is just have the action item for SIG Node. This is kind of the community-wide effort, right?
Yeah, we can cover it now, or I'm just looking for reviews. So maybe we can just, someone can like assign and like probably take it offline also if the time is a constraint.
Got it. Okay, the one thing I want to add is like we all agree Docker share is going to deprecate. We are not to change that one, right? So for Kubernetes, the signal that I think about most of this problem, it is on the Docker share in the past. And the rest actually we don't have much of those exposure. I think maybe there's some tools we build and maybe have that problem, but the most we don't. So we can find the reviewer. Yeah.
Okay, I have a hard stop now, so I apologize that I can't go over, but big thank you to Alana, Mernal, and everyone else who spoke to the items I put forward. And you'll have a great rest of the day, but I have to drop.
Thanks. I also have to have hard stop here. Thanks everyone, and yeah.
Bye, folks.
Thanks. Bye bye.